you remember when you were in school and you always had trouble studying and doing the work, and people would often just tell you to study harder in order to achieve better grades? Well, for me, that didn't actually work, believe it or not. And I think there are many more things you need to fix before you actually start doing that. And I remember in grade 9, when I was 14 years old or something, I was a pretty, not, I was below average as a student. And I got typically B's and C's in each of my classes, but eventually got to a point where they tested me for learning disabilities. And that ended up giving me a IEP, which essentially stands for an individualized education program. Um, I scored mostly average on the test, except for a couple things. The main one in particular was processing speed, um, which makes sense because I take a lot more time to think things through. And what that granted me was, in certain classes and whatnot, I could essentially use computers, um, and I could also take more time on tests, and I could take my test in a separate room. I didn't always like doing that because for some reason I want to challenge myself, and I want to have an even playing field with, I guess, my other fellow students. And so I would try to stay in the class with them, and I guess uh, with the IEP, I would still try to do better than them, even with that disadvantage. Um, which is funny because once I transitioned to high school, I actually started getting better grades. I got I got A's in every single one of my classes except for English grade 10. And I received awards and scholarships and whatnot. The thing is, I don't think this was an accident. To give you some context, I pretty much got onto self improvement between that test and the point where I was transitioning to high school. So it was the summer break of grade 9. And pretty much with consistent self improvement, I became more successful. And so, what I want to tell you is things that will indirectly make you more successful as a student or really just in life in general. The first thing before you can really just work harder is that you need to fix your own life. And so, one of the starting habits that I did was exercise. And to humble myself, I only did 10 minutes a day. I did 10 minutes a day and a 20-minute walk with the dog. And while I definitely would say that I wasn't impressive, it was one of the building blocks that taught me about consistency and about showing up on the daily and doing the work no matter what, no matter how you felt, is always showing up and just being there to do what's necessary. So that was the first part. The second thing was that since I started exercising, I became more self aware of other parts of my life, and so the diet I had essentially changed. I stopped eating and drinking three things. It was ice cream, pop, and chips. And not only was I consuming less sugar, so I started losing fat, but I actually felt less lethargic. And so I started gaining more energy to do the things that were pretty much necessary. Speaking of energy, another thing that I started doing in grade 10 when I was in high school was that I started to actually develop a sleep routine. And I think even now I undervalue it too much, but the importance of sleep is pretty impactful. I'm pretty sure there's a statistic that says that people who have had sufficient enough sleep remember things up to 41% better than those people who are sleep deprived. And so not only is it that benefit, but the benefit of essentially developing a routine. Because when you have a certain time to exercise and to study and to go to bed, you always are in the right mindset at the right time where you can actually do what needs to be done, and you're always more focused, I should say. The last habit that I developed was journaling. And journaling has been one of those things I've always really advocated for. It has essentially helped me self-reflect. So with a journal, you can always think about the problems you have, about potential solutions, and you can always create a plan. And so self-reflection is a really important part of improvement, because without it, you're kind of becoming stagnant, I would say. Without a clear plan and decisive action, you kind of just let wherever your feelings push you towards, right? So without that, you'll probably fall to procrastination, and you probably just wouldn't do the work that is necessary, and you never improve. Now, the next part of this is the mindset of a successful student. I remember when I read a book called The 10 Steps to Earning Awesome Grades. I'm pretty sure it's by Thomas Frank. That book essentially taught me to sit at the front of the class. The reason for doing so is that when you sit at the front of the class, you start acting like one of the smarter students. And you'll be more present in the class, you'll pay attention more, you'll ask more questions, you'll take more of those opportunities to really study and use all the extra help you can get, essentially. So acting like the person you want to be will eventually grant you those types of behaviors in order to get where you want to go. Another interesting thing about my schoolwork was, instead of viewing it like it was optional, I started viewing it like I had to do it. And when you view it like this, there's a lot less room for procrastination, and you have to just do the work. I remember a lot of people are saying that they just need to pass this class or whatever, and I remember them always underachieving, and a lot of them would actually fail their classes. So the best thing you can do is to set a really high goal, because even if you underachieve it, then you're still doing fairly good. Finally, and once you've fixed your mindsets and you've really fixed all your habits and whatnot, you need to actually start doing the deep work, where you essentially try to become in a flow state where you can work for long periods of time. And one of the best things you can do for this was reading. I remember when I got into self-improvement, I started reading a lot, in particular self-improvement books, which not only helped me learn and change my perspective about life, but it actually started improving my attention span. And when you improve your attention span, you can focus for longer periods of time and you can do the work that needs to be done. I find that a lot of people talk about Pomodoro study blocks, where you like study for 25 minutes and take a 5-minute break. That hasn't necessarily worked for me 100%. Although the music part of that has, where I will either listen to like study music, which is like binaural beats or whatever the hell, or just music in general, and having that and a certain spot to study with essentially no distractions will help you get into that flow state as well. But I will say that you shouldn't use music all the time, because once you start using music for exercise and for studying and for really just chilling out or like driving a car or anything like that, eventually the music becomes less effective. So use music as a tool that is only in certain situations or when you really need it to help you achieve, because without it you may find that you won't be able to focus. So be very specific about when you use it and when you need it. But that is pretty much all I have to say. I really wish that you will succeed in school, and I really hope you succeed in self-improvement. I want to wish you the best and good luck. Peace out.